Computer. Okay, we're on. All right, ladies and gentlemen, or probably mostly gentlemen, but ironically, I have a lady on today, and there needs to be more lady inspectors. I used to have one, and she was fantastic. So I have two daughters, so I am very encouraging. I have Miss Rose Buckley on the podcast. How are you doing this evening, Rose?
I'm doing very well. Thank you so much for having me here today.
Well, cool. Well, I have so many questions, and please tell me to shut up when, this is your interview, not me. I mean, all the listeners have heard me, like, ramble on, so we want to know more about you. So tell us, first of all, we want to get to know more about you. So how did you get to be a home inspector? And, elephant in the room, there's not that many lady inspectors. I really think there should be more. But tell us, your background and how you got to be an inspector, and I'll shut up and let you take the mic.
Wonderful. And you never have to shut up. I love hearing you talk. So a little bit about my story. I know that it's very unusual to see female home inspectors, and I'm really glad that, I get to be an ambassador for, women getting into the field, because it is a wonderful field for women too. But a little bit about me. I graduated from the University of Delaware in 2007, and I had a degree in French, Italian, and Spanish literature, because I just love people and I love traveling, and I figured, if I can be a translator or, something using my languages, I can talk to people for a living. And that really intrigued me. And so I went out in the real world and I got a job as a translator, and it was really underwhelming. I sat at a desk and somebody gave me something to translate, and I sat quietly at my desk and translated it and then pushed it on. I felt like Google Translate. It was really boring. And once you're in the translation
for this.
Yeah, like once you're in the translation industry, that's pretty much all you do. And one day I looked around and I was like, I'm really not fulfilled by this. This isn't really what I wanted to do. I wanted to talk to people, not sit alone at a quiet desk, and have no creative license with my career. And once you get into that, there's very few things that you can do as a translator. You can actually be, a court translator. You can travel with the CIA, kind of thing, but very few things that you can do as a translator. And I did not want to peak in my career at 24.
Yeah.
So, yeah, not only do you peak in what you can do in your career, really, but with that comes like the peak in the money. So, I couldn't continue to go and not have too many raises. So I ended up switching, and I said I really wanted to, be lively. And the reason I got into it was I was inspired by my French class in high school. And I thought, well, let me be a French teacher. So I ended up going on and getting my master's in education, and I taught at a high school where I lived in Wilmington, Delaware for about
awesome.
3 years. Yeah, it was a lot of fun, but it was overwhelming.
Right.
There's definitely a reason, unfortunately, that most teachers leave within the first 5 years of their career, because it was just too demanding and too exhausting. I was working over 10 hours a day, and
making lesson plans, grading papers.
Exactly. And it was just exhausting. And at the time, because I had 3 languages, the administration had made me teach in a 7-period day. I was teaching French 1, French 2, French 3, French 4, Italian 1, Italian 2, Italian 3, and Spanish 1.
Wow.
And it was, I was teaching, during one period, I was teaching French 1, and, they threw in there, they said, oh, this kid's, class schedule doesn't fit with your Italian 2 class, so we're just going to throw them in your French 1. Is that okay? So I was teaching multiple languages in multiple levels at one time, and I was just burned out after 4 years. I physically and mentally couldn't take it anymore. So I moved to Barcelona.
Oh, wow. I've been to Barcelona. That is a beautiful city.
It really
beautiful city. I took a cruise out of there, and we had like extra days on both ends. So we had a weekend on the front end and the back end.
Oh, it's wonderful.
That's
and the people are so great.
Have you been to that, like, whatever that fort is up on the hill that's, like, overlooks the whole city?
I saw it, but unfortunately I was studying there. I actually moved to Barcelona so that I can get a teaching English as a foreign language TEFL certification. So I was constantly going to and from school. So I was very much like a local when I lived there. So unfortunately I didn't do a lot of the touristy stuff. I went to the beach on weekends, but I didn't really go and see all the touristy things. Of course I went and saw Sagrada Familia, but that was
the church that's like they're building forever.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's been under construction for over like 300 years or something like that.
Yeah. What's the architecture architect, what's his name? He's from there. What's his name?
I know who you're talking about, and like off the top of my head, I can't think of his name. But
I want to say like Gotti. That's not right, but something
Gaudi,
like that.
maybe.
It's like one or two syllables, but
yeah, it's a very well-known guy, and I can't off the top of my head think of it.
yeah.
But my apartment was actually 2 blocks away from that, so in the morning before class, I would go jogging, and I would jog around Sagrada Familia. So I can only imagine how many touristy pictures I'm in the back of.
Hey, I need to go check mine. Maybe you're in there.
Maybe.
You know, when we went to Europe, Rose, that was actually my favorite city. I mean, I've taken 2 tours. I mean, cruises, Mediterranean. You know, that's been to several cities, and I didn't expect Barcelona. You know, I thought that was just going to be a port, but that was my favorite city.
It's gorgeous. I mean, the weather is perfect. The people are so nice. I mean, it's just wonderful all around.
Yeah,
you're not too far from the mountains. You're right on the beach. It really is a great spot.
It's clean. It's clean. It's beautiful. Well, look, I got to back up on a couple of things you said there.
Yeah.
A couple things. I, too, have a master's in education, and that's how I met my wife. We were both former teachers, and you lasted longer than me. I lasted 3 years. My wife did 10.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we were both elementary teachers.
Okay.
Yeah, I majored in, I'm sorry. This interview should be about you, but.
No, I'm curious. So what did you teach?
I taught elementary. I was certified K-6, and so was my wife. I went to college about the time, you probably don't remember this, but there was this, probably like 3 years old when this movie came out. Kindergarten Cop came out.
I love that movie.
Yeah, it's not a tumor. I was in college when that movie came out, and I had always I drove a school bus in high school. I taught swim lessons, and when I had an undergraduate in finance, and I tried to go out and get a job, and it was a recession. This was like 92, 91, 92. And there just were no jobs. And they had a program where you could go back and get a master's in elementary ed for in like a year and a half. So I did it. And I taught for 3 years, and I love the kids. Over half of my kids are my friends on Facebook. They're all like 30 now. Because, they were 10 years old then. I taught student taught first, but I taught 3rd and 5th. But same thing. I burned out. I mean, I love the kids, but you don't make any money, and I don't want to suck up all your time because this should be about you. But I can tell you the day I couldn't do it anymore. When we had this meeting, and they were talking about the integrated test scores, right? And they told us, I'm going to kind of paraphrase it, but this was the general message. We're not going to worry about the low kids because we don't have enough time to help them. We're not going to worry about the high kids because they're going to do okay on the test. We're going to focus most of our attention and our resources and our money and our time on the middle kids because that's where we can get the most return, for. I'm sitting there going, these aren't stocks. These are freaking kids, man. What the hell's wrong with you people? And I was just like, I can't, sorry, I didn't mean to get off on that.
Oh, no, I 100% understand. And, being a language teacher, I didn't really, it was a requirement for graduation, but it wasn't really a subject that was tested like that.
Right.
But I heard many of those same things from our administration. And I think for me, the big thing that made me walk away was I constantly work, and I still do in my new career as a home inspector, but I always work to improve myself constantly. Right. And so there was a lesson that I did that was observed for, you have to have so many observations.
Oh, yeah.
And it was damn near perfect. And I actually still have footage of it because they actually filmed me. And it was a really wonderful lesson. The kids were engaged, they were excited, they were laughing, we were learning, and it was so much fun. And by the end of it, I felt so good. I was like, yes, I'm so glad that was the one that they, that they observed. And then, when I had my meeting afterwards, they said, well, everything was great, but I have to write down something that was wrong. So they said, there's something wrong in everything that you do, regardless of, how you think you did. So they had to nitpick and find things that were wrong, and they made
it for you.
Exactly, and they made something out of nothing. And I said, I can't do this. If there's constantly this bar that's set that I will never ever meet, this isn't for me. I'm all about constant improvement, but you have to agree when something's good, and that's it.
Well, and here's the other thing, Rose. Something else I figured out, just like you figured out, the worst teacher and the best teacher make the same amount of money.
Oh, yeah.
Where And it's sad for the kids because so many, I mean, I'm sure you would have been, you know, and me too. I mean, but it's just like, you know, I can't live in the hood and my kids be poor. I mean, I had to get out and do something else, but you know, you want to improve yourself, constant improvement, and you could be the best teacher in the world. You're not going to make any more money than the worst teacher. So.
Exactly. And, you know, I ended up, when I ended up leaving teaching, one of the reasons I moved to Barcelona was because I went through a divorce at the time because I was so stressed out at work that I unfortunately neglected my marriage. And so, you know, he ended up leaving and I found myself on my own and I was looking for an apartment. And I found after having a master's degree and over 7 years of experience working with 5 years in teaching, and I also taught at a local community college, so I had college experience, I could not afford an apartment. And I was 29 years old and I said, wow, this is really bad that I have to live with someone else in order to be able to afford to live, literally.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's another reason I left. I said, you know,
a master's degree and I mean, I have to have a roommate at 29. I mean, I'm not 20 in college anymore.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I ended up moving to Barcelona and that was very temporary. I ended up meeting my boyfriend that I'm living with right now. I met him just before I left for Barcelona. And while I was in Barcelona, we talked every single day. And it was one of those things where I just kind of decided that this is something special. And I don't want to, you know, let this go. I don't want to just kind of too scared. So I jumped full force into it and I moved to Maryland to live with him. And we had only known each other for 3 months when I moved in with him. And yeah, it's been over 3 years now that we've been together and incredibly happy. Couldn't be any happier. And I'm glad that I did it. But when I moved to Maryland, to answer your initial question, now that we're like 20 minutes in, to answer your initial question, when I moved to Maryland, it was early September and all of the teaching positions were filled. And so I said, well, crap, what am I going to do? So fortunately, I was able to teach that fall at my local community college. But I didn't, again, I said, I'm jumping right back into something that I tried to escape. So I said, I really want to flip houses. So that's what I want to do. But I have absolutely no experience. And so my idea was, you know, I did some research and I knew that I would be going to auctions and, you know, bidding on houses while I'm at the auctions. And I said, I want to have the knowledge of a home inspector so that when I arrive at the auction, I can observe the property and make an evaluation very quickly on whether it would be worth it or not. So for instance, if I saw a buried oil tank out back, I'd say, no, thank you. I'm going to walk away from this one. I don't want to deal with that. So that's the kind of knowledge that I wanted. And I said, you know what, I'm also a homeowner. So it would be great to have the knowledge to maintain my home. And so I ended up going and signing up for the home inspection course at my local community college. No intention on being a home inspector, but halfway through, I was doing so well in the class. I loved it. And I ended up going to a MAHI meeting, like a local ASHI meeting. And I met my current manager, and that's where he was like, you look different, because there was a crowd of like 89 men and then me. And so he walked up to me at the lunch break and he was like, what are you doing here? And kind of broke the ice, made me laugh for the first, you know, I was nervous. I was surrounded by people that didn't look like me and didn't want to talk to me. And so he hired me right on the spot. He said, once you finish your class, if you pass that national exam, you're hired. And so that's how it happened. And I ended up being, you know, going into home inspections full-time and doing flips part-time. So I switched it and I love it. I'm so happy that I did it.
Awesome. Well, there's so much there that I don't even know where to start. All right. So a couple of things I want to touch on, and I hope this doesn't offend you or anything. But so one day I am going to a home inspection CE, you know, that I got here. And you're right. You know, I have my pest control license, home inspection, and real estate. And so one day, so I log in to check my email, you know, and it's Yahoo or whatever back then. This was years ago. And just bear with me for a second. And it said, you know how they have like those clickbait headlines, you know? And the first one was the top 10 hottest professions. So I'm like, you know, I'm curious. So I click on it, and it must have been women voting on this, because it was like, you know, well, doctor, lawyer, but then police, fireman, you know, the whole uniform thing. And, you know, real estate made number 7 or 8, I think. So then I go on to my home inspection CE. I'm sitting there in class, and, you know, I'm looking around, and no offense to my brethren, but I'm like, we ain't never making that damn list. Never. And the pest control one too. Rose, you may be raising the bar there. You may be raising the bar. I hope that wasn't offensive or anything.
Oh, no, not at all. Thank you so much. That I always blush. I don't know what to say to that, but I appreciate that. Thank you.
No, it's awesome. I had a woman inspector for a couple of years. She went on to do something else, and she was great. And, you know, I told you, I have two daughters. You know, I'm all about, you know, women can do, you know, in fact, I mean, there's certain things women can see that I can't see, or men can't. I mean, there's different ways of thinking. And I mean, I hope that doesn't. Anyway, I don't know where I was going with this, but she was great. I was a little worried at first when I hired her, and I told her, I said, look, you know, I'm pretty open-minded, but some of the people, you know, this is a good old boy. I live in the South, you know, but, you know, it was amazing. She was I only got a little bit of, you know, backlash, good old boy, you know, builders, woman, what's she know, you know, blah, blah, blah. But, you know, there's a trainer here in North Carolina, Bonnie Gregory. Oh my God. She is like the most knowledgeable. I take her class every year. I would put her knowledge up against any home inspector ever. I mean, she is she has a husband-wife team, but she knows. If she's in North Carolina, it's Bonnie Gregory, but they're going to try to go nationwide. But anyway, sorry, got off on that. So, one other thing I want to ask you, and then we'll move on back to the home inspection question. So the University of Delaware, I think I know where that is, because I used to, it's a long story, but my father was a mortician, and anyway, I drove a truck when I was in college to New York and back, and I always stopped when I got to Elkton, Maryland. And isn't that the exit right there? It's like Harvey DeGrace or something, and then Elkton, Maryland.
Exactly,
that was like my stop, like, because, you know, I'd spend the night there and then go into New York City, because it's like, you know, an hour and a half from there. But isn't that like where University of Delaware is? Because I got lost a couple of times. And I was
exactly. Yeah. So if you take 95 north and you go through Maryland, and, you know, you go through Havre de Grace, and then you go through, you know, a whole bunch of different towns. And then Elkton is the last stop before you get into Delaware. Like,
right.
Delaware. And Delaware is so small, and it only cuts through the top of Delaware. You're only in Delaware for like a half an hour, I think, at most. It's very
but there's like a mall on both exits, because there's no like state tax or something in Delaware, because everybody goes to Delaware to shop, or used to, I think.
Oh yeah, there's a Christiana Mall out there in Newark, Delaware. So you go through Elkton, and then you go through Newark, Delaware, and that's where the University of Delaware is. And they've really, really built up a lot of, you know, local stores along Main Street in Newark for the University of Delaware crowd. But then they also have a mall, which is in it's Christiana Mall, which is, you know, near Christiana in Newark, Delaware. And that is a huge mall, and they've done so much with it. There's like a Nordstrom there now.
Well, I was thinking, I mean, you know, because state taxes here are like 8%. So if you were buying a couple of $1,000, you know, back to school or you know, a computer or something, it'd be worth it, you know, to go to, you know, no taxes or what.
Yeah, it's a huge draw for Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Maryland. Everybody goes there. So yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Well, I know where you went to school. Well, cool. Now we should probably talk about home inspection. I'm sorry. I had ADD. Squirrel. So, all right. So you were flipping houses, and you took the course, and you met the guy with US Inspect. Now, this was 3 years ago. Is that right? Or
it's been about 2 years now, about a year and a half, 2 years.
Okay, so you have a franchise with US Inspect. Now, you're in Maryland?
Actually, we don't have franchises. US Inspect is actually just like, it's corporate, and they only and they open different offices. So like, you can't buy a franchise from US Inspect.
Oh, I see. So now, what is your area or your territory? Whereabouts are you in Maryland? What part of Maryland?
So I live in Frederick, Maryland, which is about 45 minutes to an hour outside of Washington, D.C., out west of D.C.
Okay.
And I'm only like half an hour, 40 minutes from south of Gettysburg. So,
nice. Beautiful country out there.
Yeah.
Well, I told you I drove a truck for my dad. I've been out there. It's beautiful out there.
Yeah.
So now I know you haven't been doing it that long, but it's been changing a lot. Rose, tell us about some of the changes you've seen.
I've seen a lot more acceptance. You know, we were talking about women in the field, and, you know, you said that you've gotten a little bit of pushback from the good old boys. I've found that that's really getting better. You know, the more that I get out there, from what I hear, there are only 5 female home inspectors in the entire state of Maryland. And so there are not many of us. And in the beginning, I had a lot of pushback. I think it was a mix between me being new, but it's also a mix of, people being like, who is this young girl? Because, it's a good thing for me, but I look young. And I'm going to be 34 next month, and not many people know that.
I would have not thought that. I would have thought like 26 or so.
Yeah, so hey, I'll take it. I'll take it every day. But it doesn't bode well for me as far as, what I look like when I go to a site and meet with my clients. Some people just look at me and their eyes get really wide, like, oh, who is this? Does she know what she's talking about? But the more that, I've been on social media a lot, I've been sharing a lot of information, and now I would say about 95% of the inspections that I get are by request. People see me online, and they, or they see one of their friends commented on something of mine, so it showed up on their Facebook page, and they said, oh, that's a home inspector, and they watch my videos, and they're like, oh, she knows what she's talking about. Cool. And so, they're hiring me. So I guess the acceptance of people wanting and actually now starting to request a female home inspector, that's changed quite a bit. So I'm really happy to see that.
Awesome. Well, and I got a little bit of advice I'll give you there too. I had this inspector a couple of years ago, Jonathan, and his father was a contractor. He grew up around it, but he was pretty young to begin with. He was like 25, 26. But he looked like he was 15. He had that boyish face. I mean, I was like trying to get him to grow some facial hair. Like, please. Yeah. I told him, I said, and in fact, he went with me a couple times. And, even when I was doing presentations, a realtor asked him one time, Jonathan, how old are you? And I just told him, look, I'm going to be a realist. The second you step out of that car, you're going to have to prove yourself every day because, and he did for the most part. But I said, you can't ever phone it in because you're going to be tested every day and you have to prove yourself. And he did. And it's unfair. It's unfair. I walk out, I'm 49 now. I can't believe that. He's like,
you look very young too.
He's been around. He looks like he's been beat up a couple times. But anyway, just know that you have to prove yourself over and over. And but I'm sure you already know.
Yeah, and I feel fairly comfortable in doing that as well. I'm very comfortable in, how I do my home inspections and how I speak with my clients. And, even when I walk up to an inspection and I get those wide eyes, like, who is this? I don't let it, I kind of see it as a challenge. Like, okay, well, you'll see. Let me take you over here to your compressor and I'll tell you all about it. And, I kind of take it as a challenge, and I treat every client the same. As in, I give them all the same respect, and I speak to them with the same, way that I always speak with everybody. But sometimes it's just kind of like an inner chuckle to myself, like, okay, within 2 hours, by the time we leave here, you'll be thinking something different. So.
And Rose, somebody's probably going to contact you to do like training videos. You would be good. You've got the personality, like to do training. Somebody will contact you. You watch.
I hope so.
Well, okay, so you're a single person operation. Rose, how do you handle phone calls and scheduling?
Well, I actually work under US Inspect, and so US Inspect is the parent company, and they have different offices, field offices throughout I think we're in 19 states now, so where we have full-time employees. And so I'm a full-time employee of US Inspect, and as one of the benefits of that, we do have a residential sales team that fields all of the phone calls. And
okay.
So unfortunately, whenever anybody calls US Inspect and asks for an inspection, they go straight to the 1-800 number, which is our main office. But we also do our own, they kind of treat us as, yes, we're an employee, and they will throw us work whenever somebody calls US Inspect and says, hey, I need a home inspector, and they're just very vague about it. Then they'll assign them out, the work out to different inspectors in the area. But I do have to go out and work and, advertise for myself, do marketing for myself. And, most of the time when those come in, I've had people, earlier today, I got one of the agents that I work with quite often. He sent me a text message with the address of the property and the day he wants to do it, and I got it scheduled for him. I just sent an email to our main office. So people email me, they send me Facebook messages, they send me text messages, and sometimes they will call my work phone or my personal phone. And, however they get to me, I get the work through to our corporate office to get scheduled. So
sure. So like if I was in Frederick, Maryland, and I saw you on social media or something, but I called the 800 number, and so how would that work? I just say I want Rose, or would they automatically schedule you with me? Or
Well, there are two, if somebody calls and says, I need somebody for Frederick, Maryland, there's actually myself and another one of my coworkers, Chris Quick, actually lives out here as well. So the office, if nobody specifically requested me, then the office would look and say, okay, well, which one of them is available on this particular day? And, who have we, sent more work to, we'll try and throw work to the other person. So they do have a balancing system. But if you did call in and say, hey, I'm looking for an inspection in Frederick, Maryland, and I'd like to see if Rose is available, then they would look on my schedule and get it scheduled for me.
I see. Now, does US Inspect have their own, or do they use ISN, or do they have like their own scheduling software type sort of thing?
We do use ISN, yeah.
Okay. So it's cool.
Yeah, very easy.
Yeah. So Rose, does your state have licensing, and are you a member of any associations? Which one, and what have you seen benefits of?
Oh, absolutely. In Maryland, it is required to have a license. It actually blew my mind when I was going through the licensing process that you didn't have to have a license for certain places. So, it just blows my mind. That
me too. I'm like, because we're a licensed state, but when I talked to somebody, I was like, how do you do that when you don't have a license? I mean, I have not known anything else, really.
Yeah. And so actually, I serve not only Maryland, but also Washington, D.C., because Washington, D.C. does not require any certification. So I'm able to serve both Maryland and D.C. And since I'm only 45 minutes outside of the city, it's very easy for me. In fact, 2 days ago, I was doing 2 condos out in D.C. So it's very, very lucrative for me to also serve D.C. And I have a lot of wonderful agents that I work with out there that, when you go to a job and you just laugh the entire time because you just love the people that you're working with. I have a lot of really wonderful agents out in DC as well. So,
awesome.
In Maryland, you, in order to get your license, you have to do a 72-hour in-person course. So you can't do an online course in Maryland. You have to do it in seat, have to be live. And so I did it at my local community college. It was wonderful. And so you have to do the 72-hour course, and then you have to pass the NHIE, and you have to have a certain amount of insurance. And then with those 3, you can be a home inspector in the state of Maryland. But local states, like Virginia, I have to take another 8-hour course, I think, in order to work in Virginia. I'm not quite sure. I'm waiting to hear back from them. West Virginia just passed a little bit more legislation on the requirements there, so I'm looking to that. And Pennsylvania and Delaware and New Jersey, they have a little bit more that they require. So
you're pretty close to all of those, I guess, right?
Yeah.
Well, you got to work
40 minutes south of Pennsylvania. It's very easy for me to do that. And I'm about 15-20 minutes north of Virginia. I'm in that little tiny piece of Maryland out west. So I'm really close to both. And actually West Virginia as well. I'm only maybe a half hour from West Virginia. So
it's good and it's bad. Because see, I'm right on the South Carolina line. So we do North and South Carolina, but it's like, there's a different termite letter for both. There's different licenses and different requirements. And South Carolina used to play well with North Carolina, but North Carolina didn't play well with South Carolina. So now they don't play well. None of them play. So it's like, they used to give reciprocal, but now they don't like each other. Yeah. It's kind of a mess, I'm like, because it's weird. And fortunately, I took that InterNACHI course because this year I was like, my pest control, my termite license, I needed 1 hour in North Carolina. It's like a 5-year thing. But I needed 11 in South Carolina. I'm like, holy cow. Well, some of the stuff I had taken in North Carolina didn't. But anyway, I looked on InterNACHI, and they had one that was 12 hours. So I took it, and it was required for both. I mean, it was accepted. So
yeah, that's wonderful. And speaking of, to answer your question, I am a member of InterNACHI, and I'm also a member of ASHI as well.
Me too.
Yeah, and I find that InterNACHI's courses are absolutely amazing. Amazing. I think I'm like 26 hours into different courses. So they do a really good job with their education.
Now, are you going to what's the Inspection World in San Diego?
I am going there. So I am. I'm really excited. So I'm not going in the capacity of being a home inspector per se. I'm not going representing US Inspect. I'm actually going there with ID Energy, and that's a recent partnership. So I'm sure you've met Brent Loya with ID Energy.
Yeah, down at Inspection Depot or something. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, he's wonderful. So Inspection Depot is the parent company, and they have ID Energy as one of their, under companies. The umbrella company was the little ones underneath it. I can't think of the name of it, but one of the little companies that's underneath Inspection Depot. So ID Energy, they work with the Department of Energy, and they can get people certified and, do the quality assurance in order to make sure that they comply with the DOE and offer home energy score assessments. And so there's a lot of move towards that with, climate awareness and things like that in the United States.
Sure.
And different states are actually looking into making it legislation. So I'm getting off topic, so I'm so excited about that project. But I've actually been asked to be the ambassador for that program. So
cool.
yeah, I'm really excited. They flew me down last week, and I was able to meet with Brent and Michael, who is the CEO of that company, Inspection Depot, and they're wonderful. So now I'm the official ambassador for that program. So they've actually paid to fly me out to Inspection World. So I will be there as the ambassador for the home energy score assessment program. So I'm excited to be there.
Awesome. Well, I'll see you. Maybe we'll have a beer in person.
Yeah. So you're going, so I'm going to see you there?
Yeah. I'm going. I think I'm going to go Saturday. I'm actually presenting on the the last day.
Okay.
I have to double check.
Okay.
And then, of course, going to the InterNACHI thing in April or whatever that is, too. So
me too, yeah.
I got to give equal time.
Yeah.
I love everybody. I love everybody. Stephen Covey has the 7 habits of successful people. And one of the habits, Rose, is sharpening the saw. I always tell my guys that, got to train, sharpen the saw. Yeah. So what do you do to sharpen the saw? Or, keep knowledge?
Oh, yeah. So as we talked about, I'm always trying to improve myself to be the best, at what when I was a teacher, I tried to be the best teacher that I could be. And now as a home inspector, I try and do the same. I understand that there's a lot that I don't know. And so I constantly try and improve myself. So I, as I said, I'm almost up to 26, I think, hours with InterNACHI, doing the courses on there. I don't need them because I don't need any of those CE credits, because in the state of Maryland, for your first 2 years, you don't have to have any continuing education credits in order to renew. So I don't need them in any way. I just wanted to be the best home inspector that I could possibly be. So I've taken these classes so that I'm more knowledgeable. So taking online courses like InterNACHI, I've also been very blessed that US Inspect, my manager in particular, has been really, really education focused. So I have my certification to do wood destroying insects. I'm certified for that. We don't require certification by NRPP, or is that it? The National Radon Program?
Yeah,
NRPP, I think.
Mixed up, but you're close.
Yeah, something like that. The National Radon Program.
Yeah, so, there's so many acronyms I can't. There's 3 different ones that our state recognizes, and 2 of them sound like that.
Well, the national, we don't have to have any certification nationally in order to do radon testing, but my boss manager said, that's what I want you to do, so you're definitely going to do it. So I'm certified nationally for that. I'm also, I recently went out with NADRA, the North American Deck and Railing Association. I got certified as a deck inspector just because I wanted better knowledge on, how a deck is supposed to be built exactly. And coming up very soon in January, I'll be going to a local mold assessor inspection training as well. So I'm going to be certified as a mold inspector as well. Sometime by June, I should be licensed to do lead inspections as well. So, I keep adding to my arsenal of things that I do, not only because I think even if I just if I never do a mold inspection for a client, I have that knowledge in my head to be able to point things out to them. Even if they don't get the full inspection, I can say, hey, got a little bit of mold here. Even if they walk away from the property and never ask for an actual mold test, at least I have that knowledge to be able to help my clients.
Yeah, no, I tell my guys all the time, you can't be too smart or too good looking. So keep working on that. And it's really cool if you can go to training somewhere where there's like kind of a vacation spot around it too, so that you can sort of have a tax write-off. Educational experience in a nice place.
Yeah.
Well, hey, side note, Rose, do you know Wes Grant? He's the guy here at National Property Inspection. You know him by any chance?
No, unfortunately, I don't.
Yeah. Well, I'm better. No, I'm just kidding. Just kidding.
Well, hopefully he'll come to Inspection Depot or Inspection World, and I'll be able to meet him.
Yeah, no, Wes is cool. Wes, if you listen to this, I was just kidding. We actually just ran into each other again at a party. Let's see. So, Rose, do you have a success quote you'd be willing to share with us?
I do, and I thought a little bit about this, and there are so many different things that I study. and, having been, a literature major, there's so many quotes that I love, but I think most recently when I've been studying a lot, trying to get my money right. So it just makes the best sense to do that. And I've been listening to a lot of Grant Cardone. Are you familiar with Grant Cardone?
10X.
Love him.
When you said that, get your money right, I said, that sounds like Grant Cardone.
Yeah, you gotta get your money right, says Grant Cardone, Uncle G.
I like Grant, and Young Hustlers, and I like Grant Cardone. Grant Cardone and Gary Vee are my two favorites.
So something that he said during one of his podcasts really hit me. And one of those things, like I had to press pause and actually think about it because it hit me so hard. He said, cost is only an issue in the absence of value. And so I'll say that one more time. Cost is only an issue in the absence of value. And I really had to pause it, and I thought over a couple of times. I said it to myself a couple of times, and it really makes the most sense. So when I think about, we in the inspection community constantly talk like, well, what do you charge for this? And, oh, this guy wanted me to do it for $100. We talk about cost. It's not something that everybody likes to talk about, but it is an important part of our business. And I lost an inspection earlier today because somebody else beat me on the price. Okay, that's fine. So when I think about that, I think, my cost is pretty mid-range for our area. And I think about the value that I give to that. So I am highly educated. I have a wonderful team. So, I can reach out to somebody if I have an issue. So for instance, yesterday I had a data plate for a really old furnace that was so old, it wasn't on buildingcenter.org at all. And I was having so much trouble. Luckily, I have a teammate on my team in Maryland. There's 26 of us on the team here. And he's a certified HVAC technician, and he's been doing it for like 10, 15 years. So I just shot him a text message and I said, how old is this? And he was able to tell me within 5 minutes. And so, there's the value there of getting like real-time answers from experts in the field. Even if I don't have the answer, I can reach out and get the answer very quickly for my clients. And so, I have value in that. I can do home energy score assessments. Even if I actually don't do an energy score assessment on a house, I can give clients the best tips and tricks on not only regular maintenance for the house, but maintenance and upgrades that they can possibly implement in order to get better energy out of their house. So there's so many things that I do to bring value to, my inspection business. And, that validates the cost.
No, I'm totally with you.
Oh yeah. And if you really think about it, that also extends to more than just money. So the cost is only an issue in the absence of value. Cost can be the cost that you spend time-wise. So today I'm spending my time speaking with you, and I'm getting a great value out of this because I get to speak with, someone that
Thank you for saying that.
Speak with somebody that I admire so much. And I admire you a lot, and I get to reach a lot of other inspectors in the community and hopefully inspire other women to join. So there's a lot of value in that. So I choose to spend my time. So the cost of the time that I'm spending tonight with you is valuable, and so that's why I'm spending it. So it really helps bring it back for me. And I'm so busy because I also have 2 other businesses that I run outside of my home inspection business. And so when I sit down and I choose how I'm going to spend my afternoon, am I going to do this or that? What's the cost and what's the value that comes from it? That really helps drive a lot of my decisions, both in business life and personal life. So that's a really big successful quote. And thank you, Uncle G, for that.
Say the quote one more time. Tell me again.
So the quote is, cost is only an issue in the absence of value.
Like it a lot. Well, and I always tell people, Rose, I always tell people when, they start talking about all that, I said, don't ever compete on price, compete on value. Don't lower your price, increase your value. And I've always said, you got to have a unique selling point, something you do that other people don't, which leads me to my next question. Mm-hmm. But, go get that professional equipment magazine and find some piece of equipment and learn how to use it, like a leveler or a sewer scope or something that your competitors don't do. Yeah. And then add that to your inspections and charge more. And what you're doing is giving more value. I mean, there's a reason, a BMW costs more than, a Hyundai. I mean, and I always tell people, and again, I don't mean to hijack your interview, but I always tell people, I'm like, look, if you were getting your eyes operated on, I'm sure you could get the cheapest surgeon. But do you want the cheapest surgeon or do you want the best? Yeah. And, so when you're talking about one of the largest investments of your life, do you want the cheapest or do you want the best? I mean, I hope that didn't come across arrogant, but do you want somebody who's just doing it for a paycheck or somebody who invests their time to become better all the time? Anyway,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
speaking of that, let's say that I'm a buyer or real estate agent in Frederick, Maryland, and there's other home inspectors in Frederick, Maryland. Rose, why should I choose you? Is there something you do that others don't?
I think that, there are wonderful home inspectors here in Frederick. I've befriended quite a few of them, and there is a lot of choice, and I'm really happy about that. But as far as, my pitch as to what makes me unique and why people would choose me. As home inspectors, as you know, we do three things when we come on a property. We're actually inspecting, which is, part of what we're there to do. We're inspecting, we're presenting, and we're writing a report. We're taking notes as needed. So we're doing three things at once, and juggling that is really difficult for a lot of people. And I feel like I've found the sweet spot, and I've been very good at balancing all three. So not only do I balance all three very well, but I'm also very cognizant of my clients' needs. So when I show up on the property, I start by setting the expectation. I say, hey, have you ever had home inspection before? Yes or no? Okay, well, this is what you can expect. And I give them the analogy that, I'm going to be looking through the entire house. I'm a generalist, so I have a breadth of knowledge, but I'm not a specialist. Specialists have depths of knowledge. So It's kind of like going to your family doctor and getting a physical, where the doctor will have a breadth of knowledge on everything. And if they find something that they can't quite explain or they need a little bit more, advice on, they're going to send you to that specialist who has the depth of knowledge in that area.
Right.
And so that really helps my clients understand, like, oh, okay, this is what I'm in for, and this is how long it's going to be. Cool. And so setting that expectation and telling them, hey, you're going to see me taking pictures. You're going to see me on my phone. I'm not being rude. I'm taking notes so that I can write the report for you. And, I tell them, you're going to get the report later today because the software that I use allows me to upload everything very quickly on my phone, and I can get the report to them within 2 hours of leaving the property.
Wow.
And so they find a lot of value in that. And actually, so do I. I'm not sitting at home writing the report for hours at night. So,
I know, we're talking. I would be typing away.
Oh yeah. So as I'm there, I tell them what to expect. And as we're walking around, I may bring up to them that, oh, the railing over here, the balusters are spaced quite a bit apart, more than 4 inches, and that's a problem. And so I ask them, do you have kids? Do you have pets? I get to know them a little bit more. And so my bedside manner with my clients and getting to know them and getting to know their, getting a feel on them really makes everything go smoother. So for instance, yesterday I had a client who has flipped so many houses. They're very familiar with homes and home maintenance. And so I didn't really go into as much with him on how to do home maintenance, whereas I would with a first-time home buyer.
Sure.
So yeah, I'm able to really feel them out and really tailor my delivery to them as needed. So, not only is it really simple to make it to order an inspection with me, you can just shoot me a text message and I'll get it done for you. But, I make the inspection as pleasant as possible. I even bring snacks and drinks so that they feel comfortable.
Awesome.
And I can't tell you how many times people are like, oh, no. And then I see them like sneaking in there and grabbing a drink or snack. And, that's what it's there for. So I'm happy that they did that. But it just makes everything, smoother and happier. And also, I donate 5% of my commission on every home inspection to one of 4 local charities. And I call it my neighborhood giving program. And so I switch out the 4 charities every couple of months just to give, other charities a platform. But I let my clients choose who will benefit from their inspection. And so they always leave with a smile on their face knowing that they gave back to the community today. And so,
wow, I'd hire you. I'm just glad you're not in my market because that's awesome. You sold me for sure.
Perfect.
On a side note, just out of curiosity, you talked about you upload it right away. If I may ask, what software do you use, or does US Inspect have their own?
Well, US Inspect developed a software that they work with a company called Go Canvas, and so we just call it Canvas is the app.
Okay.
And so I'm not sure if they worked with a company, the company Canvas, to really make it US Inspect's own version of Canvas, or if it is the Canvas app that we're using. I'm not 100% sure on that, but I can definitely get the answer for you. I can talk to our IT department tomorrow.
I was just curious, and I love your breadth and depth of knowledge. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I say the same thing about a generalist. I always use the example of, if you have an irregular heartbeat, the doctor's going to send you to a cardiologist. They might have an idea of what's wrong with you, but they're going to send you to somebody who does hearts all day long.
Exactly. Absolutely.
Same thing.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to combine these two questions, Rose, and then we're almost at the break. And I'm sorry, I'm a talker. But it's been fun. I hope I'm not holding you up. Two things. I've learned from asking this. I always say, well, what do you do in your spare time? But we really don't have. Most of us are entrepreneurs, which means we're workaholics. But
right.
If you had spare time, what would you do? And tell us something most people don't know about.
I do have a little bit of spare time. I always block off every Friday because I do work over the weekend. So I block every Friday on my schedule so that I don't get scheduled any inspections. Now, if somebody reaches out to me and says, hey, are you available on Friday? I have settlement very soon. I'll work on a Friday. But in general, I don't work Fridays as a general rule. And so in my free time, my boyfriend and I love snowboarding. And so we do that. Yeah. So it's a lot of fun. And I like to, in the summers, we go biking. We just got electric bikes. So we ride around the mountains out here in Frederick. It's so much fun. Nice. So, yeah, I like to be outside as much as possible. So, fun extreme sports are definitely, in the mix. But something that people don't know about me, which is a big part of my life. Some people may know about it. Some people don't. I actually also compete in pageants. And so
I saw something Echo. I did a little research. I always try to do a research, and it was like Echo Canada or something. So tell us about that. What's
exactly? That? So just a little bit backstory on that. I got into pageantry when I turned 30 years old. So this has not been my lifelong thing.
Right.
Yeah, so my ex-husband left me when I was 29 and a half, and I was overweight, and I lost a lot of friends in the divorce, and I just didn't really have a lot of friends. I didn't really do my makeup or hair or anything like that. And,
right.
I said, I need to take control of my life again. And so a friend of mine was like, you should enter a pageant, and I laughed out loud because I was like, are you kidding me? I was almost 300 pounds, and I was just
really?
Yeah, I lost a lot.
I don't believe
that.
I do not believe that.
I'll have to send you a before and after picture. But so I ended up losing quite a bit of weight. And because I had a date.
That's awesome, Rose.
Yeah, so I had a date for the pageant, and I work very well on deadlines. And so I ended up losing quite a bit of weight in time for that pageant. Ended up competing. It ended up being the pageant was on my 30th birthday, and I ended up winning. I had no idea I was going to win.
Wow. What was the pageant? What was it?
Well, at the time I lived in Delaware, and so I competed for Ms. Delaware, United States.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so I represented the state of Delaware at the Ms. United States pageant and made top 15 out of 50.
Sweet.
Yeah, that was fun.
My mom was Miss Randolph County. There's counties. There's 100 counties. She was Miss Randolph County in 1961, I think.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, I got the pictures, the trophies, and all that. But what's crazy is, you ever met my mom? She's the most conservative person in the world. She won't even wear a bathing suit to the beach. She won the bathing suit.
That's awesome.
Yeah, well, she's a really good piano player. She played the piano through church and all that. And, that's what her strength was. But surprisingly, she won anyway.
Yeah.
Again, I don't mean to hijack you. That is an awesome story. That is awesome.
And so after that,
about you. And I can't imagine that. I met you. I'm like, you're probably like $110 maybe.
Well, thank you. Well, thank you very much. Yeah, so I ended up going on and doing other pageants, and I ended up winning an international pageant just 2 years later. So
wow.
I was International Miss 2017, and that was huge for me. Again, I didn't think I was going to win. I just did it because I enjoyed it. I met a lot of girlfriends, and I learned how to do my hair and makeup, and it kept me on a schedule so that I would not gain weight again. And so I ended up competing for that. Won, and I had my whole year, and then I crowned my successor the year after. And now, as you said, I am Ms. Eco Canada 2018. And so I'm also on the board of Miss Earth United States. So the pageants that I'm in right now, that I involve myself in, both competing and working with, behind the scenes, I'm a producer for the Miss Earth United States pageant, are very eco-centric. So I'm one of those people. I'm not like banging down people's doors and saying climate change is real. I'm not like one of those, outrageous people, I would say, but it is something that I really care about. And so another reason why I did the home energy score assessment program, it's just something I'm passionate about. And so I work a lot with, my local communities with education and different things like that. And I do tree plantings all the time. So I work as hard as I can towards those goals. And so these pageants actually align with that mentality. And so as Ms. Eco Canada, I share a lot of information. I get to do, cleanups at local beaches and in the mountains and even in my own neighborhood. And I do education about how plastics, single-use plastics are a problem. So it's more of a platform to be able to work with people to help solve the climate issues. And so I was given the Canada title because I ended up working with a company out of Vancouver for some time. And so through work, I was eligible for the Canadian title. And I travel there to go snowboarding quite often. So it ends up working out anyway. But I'll be representing Canada in June in Vegas for the Ms. Eco International title.
Oh, that is so awesome. So
I'll need everybody to log on and vote for me sometime.
Does your ex-husband now regret? No, I'm just kidding.
It's funny people say that. People were sending him pictures of me when I won the title.
I shouldn't have said that. I'm sorry.
But I don't care. He's moved on with his life, as have I. I wish him all the best.
I always wanted to be super rich, and then every girlfriend I ever had before, I'm like, see.
It's something I've never really been interested in. But yeah.
I'm just kidding. I should have said. Well, I got one more question here, Rose, and that is awesome. I did not know that. One more question, and then we're up against the break. You know as well as I do that if you do enough inspections, you're going to have an unhappy camper. I mean, you can be the best inspector in the world, and even some of these egomaniacs that I know on some of these forums, I don't care how great you are, how much you know. I mean, sometimes there's going to be things, the contractor's going to come out there and undo a wall, and it's going to be there. I mean, you're going to have an unhappy camper. And every once in a while, somebody tells me, I've never had an unhappy camper. I'm like, you're either not doing many inspections or you're lying.
Yeah.
One or the other. So if you have one, do you have a process? What's that look like?
Well, you're right. And even if you do something so perfectly, if you do the inspection absolutely perfectly, you're still going to get some people who have different personalities and who are quite rude. And so you're always going to have somebody who's very picky. And in my experience, I've only had maybe 4 or 5 in my entire career. I've been very fortunate in the fact that I haven't had many unhappy campers, but US Inspect does have we have a claims department. So in the event that something goes wrong, somebody has a complaint, they either come to me and complain, and I just I immediately involve our claims department and say, we have a process as to what to do. We will go and revisit the property. Either myself and or my manager will revisit the property, get a whole bunch of information, take photos and get some information, and then go back and provide that to our claims department. And it's kind of handled by our legal department. Unless I can, if I go back and I explain something to them and they're satisfied with that, then it can be put to rest right then. If not, then there is a legal department that US Inspect handles it with, which is, I'm very fortunate that that's really not really happened to me so far. But I did have one unhappy camper once, and it was just, it was a 1930s house that I was in, and we'll just begin by saying there were so many things wrong with it that I usually start on the outside and then I go down into the basement. And it took me over an hour and a half to do the outside just because there were so many things wrong. Not only did I have to write it down, it was going to be a long day. And so I get down into the basement and there's active knob and tube, and there's foundation cracks, and there's leaking, and there's a boiler that's over 50 years old, and there's so many things wrong. And I'm trying to balance inspecting, writing my report, and presenting, but the client was over my shoulder. Literally, sometimes she put her head over my shoulder, literally. And it was just really uncomfortable how close she was to me all the time. And she was quite rude. And everything that I said, she negated. Every single thing. So you kind of so I would say this is a vertical crack along this kind of, and it's kind of wedging out. That means that there's hydrostatic pressure pushing in on the wall. And she'd be like, no, that's a settlement crack. And sometimes you just have to, there was at one point at the inspection.
This was the buyer, not the seller?
The buyer's niece. Yeah. And so
I can see if the seller was trying to negate it, but why would the buyer?
I have no idea. So So I paused at one point. I kept smiling and I kept talking with her. And I was like, well, you know, this is my experience. This is, you know, when you have a horizontal crack just like this and it's bowing out, that's hydrostatic pressure and you don't really have gutters outside, so on and so forth. And she just negated everything I said. And then there was one point where I said, do you have a construction background? Because she was throwing out words, you know, that normal clients don't really throw out there. And she, like a structural engineer or something like that. And it turned out she was an engineer. And so I said, you know, I'd be happy to continue this, but do you have any other questions in this area? So I kind of took it as, okay, this is going to be challenging today, but I'm going to kill her with kindness. So I just kept doing my thing, knowing that at the end of the day, she hired me for my expertise, and no matter how difficult she is, I'm going to do my thing. And at the end of the day, if she's not happy with it, we can deal with it then. But I'm not going to change me and how I do this, and I'm not going to treat her any differently just because she's being difficult. So yeah, that's the worst thing that I've ever had to face by far. It took me about 5 hours to do a regular 3-bedroom.
Now, did they call back, or did they call back later with a complaint or something?
They actually did.
And she's an engineer. I mean, you would have thought.
So what had happened was the front of the house, the roof. I got up on the roof, and it was a very steep sloping roof. I really shouldn't have, you know, technically safely gotten onto the roof, but again, I was so picky with this house. The front looked great. I would say that I estimated the front of the roof to have an age of maybe, you know, it was architectural shingles in the front, and I would say that it was maybe 4 or 5 years old. It was really good condition. But when I got on the back of the roof, it was asphalt shingles that looked like they were 15 years old.
They did it just for the looks. They did it just for the street.
So there was so much widespread damage everywhere, and I had so many pictures that I took and put into the report, and I said, it's just throughout the entire rear of the house. And it kind of looked as if the shingles were heated up, like melting in the summer, and somebody walked all over them. So it was like, you know, spaces, you could see footprints everywhere, and the shingles, the gravel on the shingles were moved. It was just atrocious. And I said, this is a really bad roof job, and blah, blah, blah. So they called and complained, and so they called a roofer as I requested. The roofer comes out, and I find this all out after my manager had revisited the property, but the roofer comes out, evaluates it, and says, that inspector doesn't know what she's talking about. She's really stupid, and you should have the entire inspection redone because this roof is fine. So,
please.
Yeah, so at that point, she makes a complaint with our main office and says, yeah, well, what's going on with this? Because the roofer says it's fine, and I want my money back, so on and so forth. So per our process, we send an inspector out to gather information for our claims department. And so I wasn't available that particular day, so my manager went out, and he 100% agreed with me. And it turned out that the roofer that she had hired to come out was the roofer who did the install.
Nice.
So
Or her cousin.
Yeah, so at that point he was like, yeah, it's a complete mess back here, and call a different roofer next time. So I felt validated in that. But, you know, we have a process, and, you know, if I were wrong, they would have handled it. The claims department would have handled it. So, yeah, it was that was a challenging one. But, you know.
I've had similar, and the bad thing is it still gave you, like, upset stomach and, you know, ulcers. And,
yep.
I posted this the other day. There's some people who are bound and determined to get a free meal before they even go into a restaurant.
Absolutely.
Fortunately, it's a small percentage of the population, but unfortunately, those people also buy houses.
Yeah. Yeah, and you know, because we are home inspectors, we serve everyone, and we have to treat them. I treat everyone with respect, and I treat them the same way, whether they're being difficult or not. So, yeah, that's a challenge sometimes.
I hear you. Well, Rose, let's when we get back, we're up against the break here. We're going to pause for our sponsors, and when we get back, we'll talk about a time when you failed.
Okay, perfect.
Hey, hi, I'm Preston Sandlin, and I own Home Inspection Carolina, and I wanted to show you a way that you can get more home inspection leads. So what you can do, you obviously can do a pre-inspection, but I understand some people don't want to do that. But what it is, we set out a sign, and this sign is going to have information about the house. When you text that, you can have information about the house. You could have a home inspection discount. You could also lead them to a website. So this is my daughter, Sarah Margaret. Say hi.
Hi.
So Sarah Margaret, you pretend like you're buying this house, and I want you to text. You're riding by, doing a kiki dance, whatever, and you see, hey, I'm interested in this house. I'd like you to text info to that number, okay?
Okay.
So go ahead and do that now. She's interested in the house. So for more information on this house, she's going to text that and a home inspection discount. Okay, so I just got the lead in the buyer. Now, you should get something in a second. So what'd you get? So click on the top one there, yeah. So you'll see what she gets. So she's going to get information about the house. And meanwhile, I got the lead. All right, so scroll up just a little bit. Yeah, there you go. So there's like a little video about the house. Of course, your phone's really slow. There's multiple pictures of the house and whatnot. And well, there goes the video finally. I'm gonna have to edit this a little bit. But the cool thing is read what it says there. Read that out loud, Samara.
This is a demo house. It is not for sale. It is for demonstration purposes only. Information about the house would go here if this house was actually for sale. If you are interested in getting a home inspection, call 704-542-6575 with the code HIC 2018. You can receive a $23 discount on a home inspection on this house or any house you decide to buy in this area. Discount code HIC 2018. 704-542-6575.
Okay. Now, well, I talk a little bit. Text that same number, text info1. You can just use the same number, text info1 now. So what I'm going to do is show you how we did a couple of other things with it. But again, the whole thing is to drive leads. Now I have the lead and I can follow up with her. She's a potential buyer. I can do a drip campaign. Let me go one. Now click on that. What you got for no, top there. Edit this. See how there's a discount code there. Home inspection discount. All right, last one. Go back to that same text and text info 3. So this is something of value that's not a discount code. It's an inspection list. So I can put that sign anywhere. And again, see, I'm getting the lead. So I'll click on here to the lead. And you see, I just got these leads. Is your number 704-7? Oh, I better not say that out loud because guys will be calling you. But obviously, all right. So did you do info 3? Mm-hmm. All right. Now click on that top one and make show what that shows on there. So all 3, I captured the lead. I did information about the house with a home inspection discount. I can connect it to a URL that has a home inspection discount, a URL with a something giveaway, a checklist, radon information, you name it. But we capture the lead. So everybody who texts this, we get that home inspection lead. They're going to need a home inspection. They're also going to need probably a realtor. So the realtor is going to like us as well. So check out inspectedhouses.com. It's a new way to get leads for your home inspection business and leads for the realtor as well. Thank you.
I've had a really good time talking to her. I hope she has. I don't know. She might.
I have. Yeah, it's fun.
This guy's boring me to death, but lots of good stuff. So tell us, Rose, about a time when you failed and what'd you learn from it?
Well, I mean, we just had the conversation recently. The last question you said, I felt like I failed my client a little bit because they had a complaint. But I guess one time that I really failed, when I was taking the home energy score assessment test with ID Energy, there's an online simulator, and you take a couple of different practice simulations in order to learn the content. And then once you finish all of that, you take a written exam, and then you take a simulation exam as if you're actually doing the inspection. And so with the simulations, you can do as many simulations as you want. You can sit there and do 500 simulations if you want to. You don't get tested on it. You don't get none of that. It's just practice. When it comes to the final exam, you get 3 chances, 3 shots, or you're out. And if you fail the third one, you have to go back and restart the entire program and do all of the simulations again.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, and so being the person that I am, the former teacher and the person who's always trying to improve myself, I was like, I'm going to pass this. It's going to be like a breeze for me. So I did the sims. They were all wonderful. And then I got to the final exam. And I did the first practice, and I was only like 3 points shy of passing. And it was kind of a blow to the ego, but you don't get any feedback from it. And so I was like, okay, let me try this again. And I tried it the second time, and I was 7 points away from passing.
What? You overthought it. You're overanalyzing.
Exactly. I was overanalyzing something, but because you don't get any feedback, you don't know what you got wrong.
Yeah.
I'm like, what am I doing wrong? And so I slept on it. And the next day I woke up and I was like bound and determined to pass this. So I felt like such a failure, and I was near tears before I took this. I mean, I'm kind of a perfectionist. And so I was like, if I don't pass this thing, I have to do this thing all over again. And I ended up passing it. And once you pass it, it doesn't tell you by how much you pass it. It's just, congratulations, you passed. But I really felt like a failure for the fact that I couldn't do that part of it. But yeah, so that's been a big, learning curve for myself that, no matter how much I feel confident in something, I still could be wrong about something, and there's something to be learned from it.
Yeah. The only test I ever failed was that stupid pest control one. I mean, like you, I got a master's degree. I'm like, man, I'm used to studying. I mean, any of this stuff, and I had something similar to you. Craziest story. When I was born, it's a long story. There was a typographical error on my birth certificate. It made me 10 years older than I really am. And I knew it because it would show on there. And I thought, well, maybe I'll get to retire a little bit earlier or something. Yeah. And it was really, I kind of saw it on there, whatever. And then like after 9/11, anyway, I couldn't get my license when I went to renew my license because they're like, hey, your birth certificate doesn't match up with your what we have on file. And I'm like, anyway, it took me a year, Rose, to get this straightened out. It's so much red tape. I had to go to, so anyway, when I went to finally get my license, I had to go to the county where I was born, get my birth certificate. It's a long, but anyway, my point is I had to retake the license test. Mm-hmm. And, at this point, I'm like in my 30s, and, it's all 16-year-olds and people from other countries. And I know they're looking at me like, you got a DUI, didn't you? I'm like, no, I did not get a DUI.
Yeah.
It's a whole story.
I promise.
But here's my point. Just like you, I'm a teacher. I'm kind of like, so I'm taking the test, and you have to get 20 right out of 25. And now you take it on the computer. When I did it when I was 16 back in the dark ages, it was like a Scantron. And I didn't know I was going to have to take the test, but, I kind of remember the signs and stuff. And I'm like going through there, and it'll tell you right away which ones you got right. And I got, I'm boom, correct, boom, correct. And I got down to number 17, and, I overthought it. You know how you like, well, in certain cases, this could be true and something. And I marked it, and it was wrong. And it was like, I wanted to argue.
Yeah.
Wait a minute. So then, but Rose, I kept going. And then, like, and when I got to 21 and I got that right, the test was over. And I'm like, I want my other 4 questions. I want to see.
Yeah. I feel you.
You just had to get 20 right out of the. And I'm still mad. I want my 4 other questions because I want to see how good I can do on this. But anyway.
Exactly. Yeah.
Now that I've taken us down this rabbit hole. Sorry, but that reminded me of that. My wife's thinking I'm nuts. I'm like, these DMV people make like $3 an hour.
Those poor guys.
Questions.
I wonder how long a DMV person stays in their position. Teachers only stay less than 5 years. I wonder about DMV people.
It's got to be not long. I don't know how it is in Maryland, but in North Carolina, that is like, I feel bad for them. I mean, they are like the most unhappiest people in the world.
Yeah, and I don't blame them. I would be too.
I dread going there. Well, on the other end of the spectrum, Rose, we talked about a time when you failed. Tell us about a I've come a long way moment. Have you had one of those?
I feel like it was just I've come a long way when I mean in everything that I do. I've come a long way. In pageantry, I won an international pageant, and I've come a long way with that. I've come a long way as far as my social media. I'm getting a lot more followers every day. I get more followers, and people liking what I do. So I'm starting to see more traction with that. But with my career, I guess the biggest thing for me was when I very first started taking the home inspection class, before I even knew I was going to be a home inspector full time. I looked at my boyfriend the night before class started, and I kind of had butterflies in my stomach, and I said, I know for sure I'm going to be the only woman in this class. And I'm not going to feel great about it, and I'm going to be nervous, and I'm going to stick out like a sore thumb. And for the first part of that semester, I really had a really hard time because, some of the guys wouldn't talk to me at all. They just kind of ignored the fact that I was there as the elephant in the room. But fortunately, the professor was female, and then there were 29 guys and me.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so as you said, there was a woman and her husband here, Vilma Sisson and her husband Bob. They have their own company, and she is a professor. So she was wonderful, a really great role model. And she's just the same that you were talking about earlier, where she knows everything. You look up to her when you need to know something.
Oh, we email Bonnie whenever we have problems.
Yeah.
I mean.
Oh yeah. Oh, I keep in touch with my professor as well. She's a wonderful resource. She's great. And so, throughout that semester, I started out really shy, really, really nervous and self-conscious. And by the end of the semester, there were a couple of guys who inadvertently made comments that kind of insulted me, but I kind of had to grow a tough skin and in order to be able to work in this industry and go on construction sites and be the only female and be taken seriously, I kind of had to foster this idea of myself that I was worth being there. And so after I got over that hurdle, I would say it was my second or third full inspection that I did myself. I started feeling that confidence and feeling my worth. And then one day I showed up to an inspection, and I was with, my client was the guy who did flipping. And then there was a construction manager there, and then I was surrounded by construction guys. And that was the first time that I didn't feel self-conscious. I felt like I belonged. And so for me, that was a huge win for me.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, Rose, I'll tell you this. When I first started out, I was a teacher, and I didn't have as many hurdles as you did, but I was young then. And, I was a little bit intimidated early on because it's like, I'd be around these guys who have done construction their entire lives and all that. But you know what? They don't know as much as you think they know.
Yeah.
Some guys really know plumbing. And some guys really know how to lay bricks, and they know a little bit about other stuff. But, and I'm not knocking them, but I overestimated. You're a smart person. I mean, if you're a smart person and you got a good attitude, you'll figure it out, and you will learn quickly.
Absolutely.
And you're also willing to admit when you don't know something, when a lot of other people aren't. They think they know it all. And the second you think you know it all, that's the second you're on your decline, in my mind.
Oh, absolutely. And it's important. That's an important part of my job. If I have something that I don't know, I'll look at my client and say, hey, this is really outside of the norm. I've never seen anything like this. Give me just a second. I'll call my manager and see if he does. And so there have been times where I've had my manager on the phone, and I say, my manager's name's Tim. I'll say, hey, Tim, you're on speaker. I'm here with my client. This is the situation. And he'll be able to conference with both of us. And I find that some of those reviews that I've gotten from clients in those situations are the best reviews I've ever gotten, just because they respect the fact that, I got them the information even though I didn't know it offhand. And I didn't try and have this bravado act and say, oh, I know this. I've seen this a million times, and give them the wrong information.
Right.
So.
Well, and I do something similar. I don't have Tim I can call, but maybe I can get his number from you. But
yeah, absolutely.
But what I do is, and it's like you said. I mean, I tell my guys all the time, like, look, nobody knows every code. If they're lying to you if they do. Nobody knows every measurement. The clearance. Some things, but the biggest thing you see is when you see an abnormality that you don't normally see, just like you said. And I always tell my client, this is a little odd. I am not 100% sure if this, don't put yourself into a corner where you say it's absolutely wrong, because it might be okay. You don't know. And there's code, and then there's manufacturer's instructions. and they always take precedent. You don't have that, handy. But I always say, look, what I'm going to do is I'm going to research this. I'm going to take a bunch of pictures, and I'm going to write down numbers. And by the time I get the report out to you, I will have a definitive if this is okay or not. But, and that's what I train them to do. But don't be afraid to admit that, I'm not sure if this is okay or not. It's not usual, I'll say that. But, there's been some things I researched, and, it's just fine. It's a particular type of event or something. And then other times, like, oh, hell no.
Oh, yeah.
But, you make a mistake when you absolutely say something that you don't know, and then you research it and you find out, ooh, I got to back up on that. So give yourself a back door.
Yes,
well,
absolutely.
Rose, and I'm sorry I'm taking so long. Do you have a favorite book you could recommend to our listeners?
That's a very good question. I was a student of literature, so there's a lot of books that I studied. And lately I haven't had so much time to read, unfortunately, for pleasure. But when I was in college, one of the biggest books that I absolutely loved, and one of the only books I actually still have, it's in the other room. It's in French, and it's called Cahiers d'un retour au pays natal, which is a notebook of the return to the home country. And so when I was in college, I studied French, obviously, and I did a semester abroad living in Martinique. And Martinique is in the Caribbean. And so, I saw palm trees on the ads, and I said, that's where I want to go to study French. So it's in the Caribbean, and it's a department of France. So they use euros, and they fly the French flag. So it is a department of France, kind of like Puerto Rico is kind of like a department of the United States. It's like
sure.
So it was really cool to live there. And so I ended up studying there. Part of the reason that I love that notebook the book so much, it's kind of poetry, but it's not like super rhyming poetry, which is what I don't like. But it's all in French, and the author, Aimé Césaire, was from Martinique. And so when I was in Martinique, we were invited, my classmates and I were invited to his office. And so we went down and met him, and I got to shake his hand. And he's one of the only authors I've ever met. And I got to tell him how much I loved his work. And about 2 years later, he passed away. So I got the opportunity to meet this author that I really loved his work for so long. And the book is pretty much mostly about his, in Martinique, there's a huge population of former slaves there. And so African-American, I guess it's not American, but they were brought over to work the plantations down in the Caribbean. And so their ancestry is former slavery from Africa. And so they feel so connected after so many generations, they feel so connected to Martinique, but they know it's not their home, where their roots are in Africa. And so it's all about, the struggle between not knowing really where you live, like where you're from, having those African roots, but also I don't want to go back to Africa because Martinique is my home. And so it's all about, not really knowing where you're from and all that kind of stuff. So it's beautiful work. And it really meant a lot to me when I was studying in college.
Awesome. Well, a side note, because I don't know that much about French, but I do know, what's your favorite American writer or American novel?
Oh gosh. I like so many different genres. So I like John Grisham. I really do like, the thriller kind of books,
Right. You like Alex Cross and what's the one with the ladies that are like the murder mystery thing? But Alex Cross, I like.
Yeah, I love murder mysteries.
Wait. I'm sorry. I'm thinking of James Patterson.
Oh, really?
That's what I'm thinking. You said John Grisham, so you're talking about like The Firm and all the legal thrillers.
Exactly, like it's a thrilling story, and you just constantly turn the page. I like those, so like thrillers with crimes.
Yeah.
But I also really like lighthearted work, so I like reading John Green. So he did,
isn't that The Fault in Our Stars or something like that?
Exactly, yeah. Fault in Our Stars and Turtles All the Way Down. I haven't gotten a chance to read that yet, but it's on my list. Maybe I'll get it for Christmas. We'll see.
Awesome. Have you read, and I'm sorry I got mixed up with Patterson and Grisham. Have you read Grisham's latest one?
No, not yet. I've been really pushing hard to grow my business, so I haven't had a lot of free time. But it's definitely on my list of things to read.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, here's a great thing: get Audible. You can listen, while you're windshield time.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
It's pretty good. I don't want to spoil it for you, but it's set back in time in the 40s during and it tells you a lot. It's during the war. The husband, I don't want to spoil it, but he was on that Bataan death march in the Philippines. But it's a thriller. I mean, it starts off, there's a murder right off the bat. And then it's like, you don't know why. I mean, you know who did it. Everybody knows who did it, but you don't know why he did it.
Yeah.
That's kind of what the whole book's about. But,
Okay. I'll have to check it out.
yeah, it's pretty good. It's pretty good.
Cool.
Well, anyway, now that I've taken us down another rabbit hole, we talked about some of the changes you've seen. Rose, what do you think, and I know you don't have a crystal ball, but how do you think home inspections might change in the future?
Well, one of the other reasons that I got into home energy score assessment is because I do believe that there's going to be a shift towards clients really wanting a little bit more information on their efficiency levels. So I feel like that's going to be another huge thing that's coming up. We see that in Canada, if I'm not mistaken, I know that in certain places in Canada it's required, but if I'm not mistaken, all of Canada, you cannot sell a house without having, or you can't list a house without having had a home energy score assessment on it.
Really?
Yeah, it's pretty widespread throughout Canada because, they're a little bit more progressive as far as the climate change.
The realtors here will hate that, man. The builders who are building them will like it, but not the realtors.
Yeah. But part of me says, oh, well, I really want to keep those realtors happy. And then another part of me says, these are my clients and I want them to have all of the knowledge that they need. And part of the home energy score assessment actually says, hey, if you implement X, Y, and Z into your house, this is how much you can expect to save and how much better your score will be. So It's not like doom and gloom. It's like, here is what your situation is. And if it's not ideal for you, then these are the things that you can do about it and how much money you can actually end up saving on the back end of it. And so that really, is a lot of value for my clients. And in certain places, like California, you have to have within, the next 10 years, all new construction will have solar panels on them. In New York, they're making similar kinds of, climate friendly legislation as far as homes. And I know that there's a town in Maryland that's not too far from me, actually. It's called Tacoma Park. And it's right outside of Washington, D.C. And they're actually throwing out, possibility of having legislation similar to Canada where you have to have a home energy score on every sale. So I believe that climate wave is coming over the United States, especially the fact that 1/3 of all of our buyers in the market right now are millennials, and it's only going to grow. And millennials really do, on the most part, really care about the environment. So this is information that they're going to want to have. So I think that is the next big wave in the home inspection industry.
Do you do with the home energy score, do you do like the infrared and the blower door and all that stuff? Or?
We will take that information if it's already previously done and put it into the home inspection score tool, but we don't actually perform them ourselves.
Okay.
Yeah, it only takes about 10 or 15 more minutes on top of the home inspection that we're already doing. So, for instance, yesterday I did an inspection on a townhouse, and when I came home, I'm still doing the mentoring program. I only have like 2 or 3 more houses to get mentored on, and then I'm full certified and can offer it to my clients. There's a mentoring program that goes along with it, and I'm about halfway through. But when I came home, I thought to myself, well, I was in this house and it would have been perfect to do a home energy score on. Well, I had all the information already from the home inspection that I did, and I have all the photos from when I did the home inspection. So I just sat at my desk and I just entered all of the information into the home inspection tool, and I was able to get the home inspection score done. So you don't even have to spend any extra time on site in order to get this done. It's wonderful.
Awesome. Well, just a couple more questions, Rose, and I'll let you go. I want to ask your opinion on something. Now, this is going to be touchy. Home inspector forums, man. It's, sometimes I'm bothered by what I see, and I've been involved in a couple of, it's like when somebody calls you out on something and it's not right. It's hard to take the high road when somebody's insulting you, and I've got into it a little bit too. So I can't, I don't want to be a total hypocrite, but I don't know how we raise the standard. I guess I'm asking what your thoughts are. And then again, it's real life. I always feel like it's okay to disagree. It's just not okay to disrespect. And you got to figure out a way to disagree, agree to disagree on certain things. And those are magic words, I think. Just say, look, we're going to have to agree to disagree on that. Doesn't mean I don't like you. Doesn't mean you don't have to, but golly, maybe it's the political climate we're in or something, but it's like, golly, you got to go right to the jugular right away. I mean, when you disagree with somebody. What's your thoughts on that? I mean, I don't even know what I'm asking. Just, it bothers me sometimes when I see it. It just, and especially when somebody asks a question and they just get like annihilated, like, you idiot, da 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 da. And we were all new at one time, and I mean, why? I don't know. I don't. It pisses me off. I'll say it.
100% agreed. I know exactly what you're talking about because I am active in, the Inspector Brotherhood. I like posting on that site. I'm also in a couple of other, Facebook groups and, chat boards, I guess you could say. And I agree with you. Some are meaner than others, for sure.
Yeah.
I find Inspector Brotherhood on the whole is one of the better ones that I've found, just because people are more open to mentoring, newer inspectors. I'm really fortunate in the fact that I have wonderful mentors on my own team at US Inspect that I can pick up, shoot them a text message or pick up the phone and call them. But I understand that many people don't have that opportunity. And so, Inspector Brotherhood is really a lifeline for them. And as you said, there are new inspectors out there who need the guidance and who, may have never seen something that is common sense for other people. So and I've had that happen where I've posted in Inspector Brotherhood once or twice and people have attacked me for it. And they say, oh, well, this code says this and this and this and this. And I always try and tell them, as we talked about earlier with codes, there's some people who know all the codes and they're lying. They don't know every single code out there. You're right.
And you know what? Manufacturer's instruction on particular things overrides code. And we don't have that. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but.
Oh, no, I completely agree. So for me, I look at people sometimes and I say, we're not code inspectors. I don't get paid to know code. I don't waste my time with knowing every single tiny little code. I spend my time, instead of knowing the exact code, I learn the code and what the purpose behind the code is.
Right.
So for instance, the 4 inches in baluster distance, that's there so that kids don't put their head through it. If I'm talking to my client and the balusters are spaced 6 inches apart, but they don't have children and they don't ever plan on having children in the house, it's not going to be a big deal. I looked at them and I'll look at them and be like, well, as long as you don't stick your head through the baluster, you're good.
It would have to be a lot bigger for my head.
Mine too, for sure. But so, for me, it's more meaningful to know the reason behind the code than knowing the exact code. Because again, we are not code inspectors. That's not what our title is. That's not what we're here to do. So when I get on those sites and, I make a comment and I say, something, and someone comes back at me with code and then they're arguing back and forth, because I've had that on my posts before. It depends on how trivial their argument is. Sometimes you run into that person, man or woman, that guy who just wants to argue for the sake of arguing, and he's right, and no one is ever going to be, and no one's ever going to prove them wrong. You just kind of have to back off and just kind of roll your eyes and know that you're not the only one rolling your eyes at that person.
And for all the listeners out there, I mean, I get it, man. I played sports. My dad was military. Yeah. I can take criticism. I mean, I'm not, I don't think we're snowflakes, but it's just, you don't have to be an ass. Exactly. That's all I'm saying, when you're like, point it out and say it may be this, or you may want to think about this, and that's fine. Yeah. But when you're like, you're an idiot.
That's just unnecessary.
I think
it's all about education, and it's all about mentoring, and it's all about, working with people. So if you think someone is an idiot, ignore the post, or you
don't have to comment. Well,
it's just unnecessary.
Some people too are, they might be suffering in their market by first of all, the market's down a little bit right now. There's a shift going on. So then they've got some of these inspectors that are, lower cost or maybe new or something. So they're feeling this threat, I guess. And then they see a new a new inspector post something. So I think they connects that person to that person, and like, you're exactly what's wrong with and the reason I'm being threatened. Most people, when they do something, it's out of fear. That's a Grant Cardone thing. It's
exactly.
Like when they say something ugly, or if somebody doesn't like you, it's usually because you're some type of threat to them in some way. You're young, you're charging less money, blah, 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 blah. And they're, you know, and I get it to an extent. I mean, we do need to hone our skills, and we do, but you know, you don't know everything either. I mean, like I said, the second you think you know everything, I mean, I've been doing this a long time, and I've done everything you can imagine wrong.
Yeah, we all have.
That way, but I still don't know everything, and I learned something. I learned something talking to you. So
yeah, absolutely. And I think for me, it always comes back to, you know, how I handle those situations in the chat forums. It comes back to what we talked about earlier. Cost is only an issue in the absence of value. And so when I look at these people posting on you know, posting negative things and calling me an idiot and so on and so forth, do I spend my time to argue with them, or do I say my time is better spent doing something else of value?
right.
And so that's kind of how I see it, because honestly, if they want to be that jerk that calls me an idiot publicly, I'm not the only one who's looking at them and rolling my eyes.
Yeah.
Other people are feeling the same way. They might not be posting either. And if people think I'm an idiot, fine, so be it. I'm going to surprise you tomorrow. And that, you know, and that confidence in myself.
And I'm 100% agree with you. Yeah. Although I'm not sure I can have quite as much as restraint as you do sometimes. I know enough I should take the high road, but every once in a while, I'm like,
it's hard. It is really hard. I actually, earlier today, it's so funny you say that, because it took all this restraint to not post something in the pageant world. I had something happen. So I have a side business where I do custom shoes, and I've been doing it for 3 years now.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, I've been, so I like painting, and so I do custom shoes, and I've been the girl that does the custom painted shoes for title holders. And one pageant, yeah, so I'm getting off. I'm gonna bring it back, but like, I've been asked to sponsor these pageants, and so when you sponsor a pageant, you give a free pair of shoe for the title holder in exchange for advertising in that pageant. So
right.
Yeah, so I've been doing that for a couple of years, and I haven't really seen a lot of sales from it, so the value of it hasn't really been there for me, but the relationship has been the value for me. So recently I found out one of the pageants, earlier today someone posted, one of the pageants that I've sponsored for 3 years now with no return. So I've just been giving free stuff to them, stupidly, but just, again, to keep the relationship. One of their title holders that I provided shoes for has just opened her own shoe boutique where she is now painting and crystallizing shoes.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
And I wrote out this, I had a moment of weakness where I wrote
taking your money and not doing, but now, and then, yeah.
And so I wrote out like a post like, don't sit here asking me for free stuff and then steal my business practice, you know. But it was a little bit meaner to the like jabbing, but obviously it was PG to the point. And it took all the restraint in me to hit cancel and delete that, but it felt good to write it.
I've done that. I've written stuff, and I was like, just being able to write it. Yeah. And I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to post it, or I'm not going to send that email. But just being able to write it, getting it out, felt good. You know what I mean? So,
exactly. Yeah. And now I got to say it. Now it's literally off my chest. I talked about it.
Yeah. I'll let my wife read it. You know, that's a good practice, is like, let my wife read it, because, you know, I can get a little heated sometimes.
Yeah. Well, when it's your business and it's your livelihood, of course you're going to be, you know, defensive of your knowledge and you know, how you're treated, you know, in your profession. So yeah.
Well, let's fun it up. And we'll end on a high note, Rose. And speaking of PG, this is actually G-rated because I told iTunes. What's the wildest, craziest, or weirdest thing you've ever found on a home inspection?
That's a good one. I have found quite a bit of crazy things at home inspections.
Okay.
It's been a little bit of a crazy ride. I would say earlier this week, so I would say on yesterday or the day before, Saturday or Sunday, I opened up the attic hatch and I walked in, and there was an adult toilet, like set up toilet seat right there in the attic. And I thought to myself, I had to take a second. I was like, does somebody come up here and use the bathroom up here? And it did not look like it was just storage. Like maybe they sent someone up there to use, like, that's your bathroom. I have no idea.
Oh, wow.
That was crazy. But another one that was really actually quite scary. I was on the property on by myself just because the agent had stepped out to take a phone call. So I was in the house by myself, and I opened up the attic hatch, and I look up, and it was from the 40s. So the insulation that was up in the rafters was, like crumbling apart. And so it looked like it was like old and crumbling and literally falling down. And all I see is this like really crazy, creepy old toy rocking horse. And it was one of those ones that has the eyes painted. So no matter where you walk in the room, it's looking at you. And it was the creepiest thing. And so with all the stuff falling around it, it just looked like a horror movie. And so I had to give myself a pep talk, and I walked up the stairs to go into the attic, and I shined my flashlight around. And I kid you not, it was an attic full of like clowns and dolls.
Oh,
yeah. And I was by myself, and I literally, I like this and was like, okay, I'm gonna go back downstairs. So I went back downstairs, gathered myself again. And once the agent was back up, in the room, at least I knew somebody was right there for me in case I didn't want to be alone in that room. So
did you take any pictures or videos?
I did. I'll have to send you one of those pictures.
Oh, yeah, that's great. Post it.
Oh, it was so creepy. Oh, it was awful. Yeah, so that was the craziest attic I've ever been in.
That's a good one. That might be top 5 right there.
Oh, yeah.
That might be top 5. Well, Rose, if you had to move to a brand new town equal to the size of where you live now, and you had to start all over, but you had all your training, room and board taken care of, but you didn't know anybody, and you had $5,000 to go out and market in this new town, what would you do with that $5,000?
I would definitely go out. One of the things that I love doing is visiting offices for realtors. And I would go there, meet people, go to different happy hours, join the local organizations, and spend some of the money on going and becoming a part of that organization. So here in Frederick, I'm a part of the Women's Council of Realtors. I would probably find a similar organization there in that new place. But I would reserve a good chunk of the money to donate to local charities and create my own events. So one of the things that I find is really, really a wonderful thing for my business is, as I talked about earlier, the fact that I donate 5% of my commission on every home inspection to a local charity. A lot of people react to that, and a lot of people really love that. So I find, when it's time to switch charities and, give a different charity a platform, I'll find one that I know is really important to a local realtor so that I can really connect with them on a personal level. And let's just say the USO. I actually unfortunately it fell through. I wasn't able to do it this year, but I plan on doing something with the USO. One of my realtors that I work with a lot is a former Army soldier. And so that's very close to his heart. And so I wanted to go into the USO. It's very close to my heart too. I'm a Navy brat. So I wanted to go in.
Your husband was in the military too, wasn't he? I mean, not husband, boyfriend, sorry.
Oh, my boyfriend. Oh, I thought you said yeah. So yeah, my boyfriend was in the Air Force. My mom and dad met in the Navy. My grandparents met in the Air Force. So, and my sister's serving in the Maryland National Guard. So yeah, we're a big military family here. So the USO is important to me, as it is some of the realtors that I work with. And so, putting together different things, like I wanted to do a gingerbread house contest at the local.
Oh, that's cool.
USO, and just kind of be like, have the kids come out, get away from their worries. When parents are abroad, it's difficult for them. I know that feeling. My dad was deployed quite a few times. So just getting your mind off of it, doing something festive, and I would spend the money investing into things like that, where I could buy all the supplies for the kids to make, like gingerbread houses. And then I could go in and be like, I'm the home inspector. I'm going to be inspecting all of your houses. And, things like that, and talking to people at the USO and saying these different kinds of, like telling them, hey, I'm a home inspector, telling people all about it and things that I do. So, a lot of the soldiers, they move quite often. So that's a good, resource there, especially since we are a nationwide company. It's not only fun, but it's also a really wonderful way to give back to the community that I'm moving into.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome,
Yeah.
Rose. Well, Rose, we're winding down, almost done here. Is there anything that I should have asked you that I didn't?
Oh gosh, I don't think so. I think we had a pretty thorough conversation.
Yeah, it was good. Sorry I talked so much.
Oh no, you did a wonderful job.
Is there any question you'd like to ask me?
I guess, so you started talking about how you got into home inspecting. So when you went from teaching, because we have a similar background, when you went from teaching into home inspecting, is it literally just because you Googled it and it was like a sexy profession to be in? Is that what made you?
Well, no, it would make the top 10 least sexy professions, but no. So I was teaching. I taught for 3 years, and I worked for a company in the summers doing pest control that also did home inspection.
Okay.
So that gentleman told me that if I got my license and whatnot, he would, hire me for what I was making teaching, which wasn't a whole lot. And then, I worked for him for a couple of years because I just want to get out of teaching. And then, I wanted to help him expand his business, but he kind of shut me down. So, I was just going to be an inspector only. So that's how I went out and started my own. And I started hiring a couple people, and I had a Chip as my manager. He came up to me and said the same thing to me that I said to Mike, and he once managed a Lowe's home improvement before, same thing. And I saw a younger version of me in him. And so he's now my manager, and, he gets paid a percentage and stuff. So it all works out. So that's kind of how I got into it. And, just like you, some days I feel like I have the best job in the world. And some days, there's clowns in the attic and it freaks me out.
Yeah, exactly. There are good days and bad days for sure. And I only have one other question for you.
Okay. Where
do you get your pants?
Pants. Yeah, it's crazy. People ask me that all the time. They're mostly golf pants, the loud mouth, this is my joke, my running joke, I try to be remembered and embarrass my kids. So I get that eye roll, oh, Dad,
Yeah.
But most of them are loudmouth, and they're like $100 for those. So
really,
not cheap, right? So, I have a whole bunch of different ones. So my daughter was taking this sewing class, and I went to pick her up. It was in summer, like sewing camp or something.
Yeah.
And I was a little early, so I'm talking to the lady that owns this little shop. Obviously she knows how to sew. And I asked her, I was wearing crazy pants, and she said, I said, could you make some of these? And she said, yeah. I said, well, how much would you charge me? And she said, $25. And I'm thinking, the material couldn't cost $75. That's a good deal.
Yeah.
So I said, well, what do you need? She said, 2 yards of material. So, Rose, I went to the cloth store, and I don't even know what 2 yards of material is, but I asked.
Yeah.
And so I just picked out the wildest, craziest. I mean, I had like, Toy Story. I had Superman. I picked out like 8 different things. So I took her, and she made me these pants, right?
Nice.
Yeah, but one thing I didn't think about, Rose, I didn't think about the thickness of the material. And 2 of the 8, let's just say, you don't want to be backlit. I taught this class, and there was this window, and the sun was shining, and
oh no.
the impression you want to leave people with at all.
Oh no.
So now every time I go somewhere, I'm like, I got the thick ones on, right?
Yeah, I remember that's the first time I met you, and I think you had like tiger pants on or something.
There's no telling. I got a bunch of different ones.
Yeah, and I was fascinated, and I was like, I have to meet him.
You're like, did you lose a bet? What happened there? Yeah, it was on the elevator, right?
It makes you stick out. It makes you.
Yeah, we got on the elevator, right? Going up. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and it's crazy. Some days I'm just not feeling it, like, because you're going to talk to people it'll get you into conversations that you wouldn't normally be in.
Yeah.
But, if I wear khakis now, people are like, what's wrong with you? Are you sick?
That's not your trademark.
Yeah. So anyway, it's fun.
Very cool.
Well, Rose, thank you so much for your time. For all the listeners out there, if you got some value, and you did, let's go give Rose some love. Let's go like her page and any other way. So tell us, Rose, what's your Facebook page, and if you have YouTube, what can they do to go out there and like and follow, or Instagram that will help you out a little bit?
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for that. I'm on Facebook. I have a Facebook fan page. It's called Rose Buckley -MD Home Inspector. I post videos very often, probably 2 or 3 times a day. Just, another thing, I wanted to educate the public about, maintenance things and, things that I find at inspections that are incorrect and how to correct them. So you can see me there. You can message me there, which is, if you have any questions or if you have any comments or anything like that. And I'm also on Instagram. It's kind of a mix between my personal and professional Instagram, but it's under Inspection Chick. all one word, Inspection Chick. That's Instagram.
CHICK?
Yeah, CHIK.
Okay, cool. Well, go like it, go fan it, go follow it. Yeah, she gave you a bunch of value. Let's give her a little bit of value. And Rose, I really appreciate your time, and thank you so much for doing this interview.
Thank you so much, and I look forward to seeing you at Inspection World.